Okay, we're back at the Walter Bosley channel, and I want to welcome everybody. You know, who who who's returning, who are returning, and those who are new. We have several new subscribers here, and you know, I'm grateful for everyone who shows up and checks us out, and particularly all you regulars who are returning. And let me jump over to the live chat. We have Nick N and Crystal Fire, Billy W. Nick, thank you for the box. It's incredible. I'll be talking about it here at the Walter Bosley channel probably tomorrow, definitely over the weekend. But thank you again. It's amazing. Let me kind of flash some of the books that our friend Nick sent to me, because several of them are kind of in the theme we're going to be talking about with our special guest. We have Richard Thompson's Vedic Cosmography and Astronomy, and we have some missing chapters of world history by P.N. Oak. Mr. Oak. Nick sent several books by him before. And we have Missing Link of World Civilization, The Indo-Aryan Colonization by Vishnu Kant Varma. These books are fascinating. And we're going to be talking about India tonight from a different perspective. But, we'll definitely get into the history. And a couple of other interesting selections that Nick sent. The Truth About Alien Abductions by Peter Huff and Moishe Kalman. Now, this is from the 90s, and I've kind of given it a look through, and it definitely has some very John Keelian, eerie, not so much more, the Albert Bender kind of stuff to it. And then you guys know how much I love time stuff. This is Higher Dimensions of Space and Time by T.B. Paulicki. I believe this book's been around a while, and this is going to make for some interesting reading. So, Nick, thank you. There's also some model kits and stuff that I'll be sharing. But anyway, thank you, Nick. We also have Malia, of course, is with us. D. Dorothy, Rui Gonsalves, Johnny Side, Megalith's here, and Gustavo Garcia Echeverria, Mirror 13, and let's see, AO, and the list keeps building. Freckle Joy's here. How are you this evening? Haven't chatted in a while. We got to talk, you, Malia, and myself, again, about things. And Voodoo Braveheart, and on and so forth. Art and Philip Blair, of course, there he is, and on and so forth. I got to get started, folks, because we got our guest waiting. Now, I have a few books by our guest, Brad Olson, and this is the first one, actually. And I got it signed by Brad on the 1st of June, 2003. So that's how long we've been acquainted. And it's this one here. You can see, well, the tabs are green. Dummy me. You can't see them. They're invisible, but there they are. It looks like an episode of, those of you who are over 50 will remember Hobo Kelly, right? And oh, look at that. You can see what's behind my head. Isn't this interesting? Oh, wow. See, what that is a still from the Saragosso manuscript, a movie that actually is quite appropriate to our discussion tonight in many ways. But Brad has traveled a lot, just so many places around the world for several years. A few years ago, about 4.5 years ago, he did an Antarctica trip that is always fun to hear about. It reminded me that if I ever go to Antarctica, I'll take the turbulence on the airplane, because I'm not crossing Drake's Passage like he did. No way. Couldn't handle it. He'll tell you more about that. But what we're going to do is bring Brad in, and we're going to talk about the mystique of travel. Okay? What do I mean by that? Not just the pure, romantic sightseeing and restaurants. I'm talking about what draws people, really draws them, to travel, not just be a tourist, but to really want to get out there and see the world, but specific, interesting, maybe off the beaten path parts of the world, right? You guys know me, I traveled for years on a job, and I saw some definitely off the beaten path places. So let's bring Brad in. Hello, Brad Olson. Welcome to the Walter
Hey,
Bosley
Walter.
Channel.
It's good to be on. Finally, all this time we've known each other 20 plus years, and that out of print Sacred Places book is testament. That one hasn't been around for at least 15 years. So
I know. This is a gem right here. I've got the one. I got a couple. I think the one that I've used in the graphic for tonight's show, and which is the tan and gray one, the Egypt and stuff.
That's second edition of that book.
Yeah, and the one with the black and red and gray, I have that one too. So, but this one, this is like one of my go-tos. And this thing, and there it is, folks, signed 2003. And
wow,
it shows you how I take care of my books, because this is almost like new still. So. Well, Brad, what have you been up to?
Library. I've got a bunch of your books too in my library.
Oh, hey, yeah, I need to send you some more, I'm sure. But you just were at, if I'm not mistaken, did you just go to Contact in the Desert recently, or was I looking? Yes, that's what I thought, over the weekend, right?
Well, a month ago.
6 weeks
ago, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Early June.
You were at another event over the weekend or something. I'm getting them mixed up.
Yeah, Mount Shasta a couple weeks after that.
Yeah. Okay. How was real quick? How was Contact in the Desert's first return to a physical event?
It was a great event, as per usual. They have a couple other new producers they brought in. They did a great job. It is still not to what their peak was before COVID. So they still had a very sizable crowd, very enthusiastic. And the people that go to Contact really love that event, and very much on the forefront of disclosure and being aware of everything going up. In fact, they had to put a pause on one of the panels to break the news that whistleblower named Grush, his whole story was breaking right then on that weekend, and they brought it up on some of the panels. So
one of those rapid fire whistleblowers, they just keep coming out at us. What do you
think's going on, Walter?
You know me. I'm suspicious of whenever the intel agency guys come out, and I'm like, okay, Uncle Sam, here we go again. It's I don't know, to me, but it's kind of suspicious. But we'll see what comes next. But let's jump into this mystique of mystical. What I want to get at tonight are those experiences that maybe you haven't got the opportunity to talk about that much, or things that have stayed with you in these places you go to. And when I look through the list, always whenever I look at this book, it's fun to see the few places that I've also been, because it's great to read your perspective on places that I've seen. It just helps enrich what you're talking about. And you have first up here that I've highlighted, Middle East, the city of Ur, the ancient city of Ur. Now, my experience with that is I got to go when I was in Iraq on the job during the hostilities that year that was going on forever. I got to go to the top of the ziggurat of Ur, which was not as accessible as I think it might have been subsequently. And the city, of course, was way out in the distance in the crevice, the big canyon, or at least that's what they said. Did you get very close to it in your travels?
No, that's in Iraq. That's not an easy country to travel in. I would not pay to independently backpack through Iraq. Could be quite life-threatening.
And Petra, of course. I know you've been there, right?
I have not been to Petra. It was definitely
You're
on
gonna
my
go.
bucket list, but I've been to within 50, 100 miles on the Sinai Peninsula and
Oh yeah,
that
okay.
part of Egypt and Israel twice.
Right. Yeah, Jerusalem.
Yep.
What'd you think of
Cool city.
Jerusalem?
Oh, I
I had
loved
to,
it. Very ancient, historic
right?
city.
Yeah, I had to
Four
work there
quarters.
twice, so I
Okay.
got to spend a week each time, and yeah, Jerusalem was really interesting. But let's jump to India. I've always been fascinated with India. We love India here at the Walter Bosley channel, and have you traveled to Nepal with David's group?
Not with David's group. I went there independently for a
Right.
month,
Okay.
trekking around.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us about that experience.
Well, Nepal, wow, it's a beautiful country, right in the from the steamy jungles of India, where very rare Bengal tigers and also elephants and other almost extinct animals still have a last refuge up to the plateau where Kathmandu is and some of the valleys, and then
Mm-hmm.
the highest mountain peaks of the world. And all the while going through with a Hindu, kind of a fusion of Hindu. There is
Mm-hmm.
some Buddhism, kind of like
Mm-hmm.
Cambodia and Bali for that matter. It's they're Hindu primarily, but they're blending of other religions. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes it so interesting. The Nepalese people are really wonderful, kind people, very hardy and small
Right.
stock. You get up to
Right.
some of the grass roofed little huts they live in at the higher
Yeah.
elevations. That's what gave J.R.R. Tolkien the inspiration for the Hobbit land
Oh,
because
see,
they're
that's
only
cool.
about 5 foot 2 tall. Yeah, there's a picture of me with my elbow on the top of a rooftop, and the whole
Mm-hmm.
doorway is below. It's only about up to my middle waist. So
Now,
it's the
I
land
gotta
of the
ask.
Lilliputians there too.
Yeah, I gotta ask you. You know, you're quite an active guy, but uh, were you considerably younger the first time you went there to
Yeah, the
Nepal?
first and only time I went there, I was in my
Yeah.
late 20s, backpacking
Yeah.
around the world.
Do you think you could go there now?
Oh yeah, I'd
Yeah.
definitely go back.
Yeah. Because I remember I was 39 when I went to South America first on the job. I was in Bogota. And by the fourth day, my boss said, "You look awful." And I said, "I feel like I have an axe in my head." So it was the altitude in Bogota. And, I had he said, call the hotel doctor. So he came over, gave me these shots, one shot 3 days in a row and gave me some pills or whatever. And then after that, I spent almost the first 4 months of that year, 2003, in South America, in Bogota, most of it, but then going to Peru and Bolivia with David Childress and at the different altitudes. But I think now, particularly with having gone through cancer treatment and in the ravages of what the vaccine did to me, I had an allergic reaction to it. I don't know if I could take the high altitudes anymore, you know, which
Yeah.
is kind of a bummer because there's places I want to go back to.
Yeah, it's
So,
rugged travel there. It's, as you said, high
mhm.
elevation. It's not for the faint of heart. They're very steep drop-offs, both when you're in buses or trekking on trails and stuff. So you got to have your wits about you and pretty good stamina to do a trek. It's harder than you might think.
Yeah, it's something else. Of all the places on the subcontinent, on India, what are your favorite?
Whew, tall order. The places that I've been to, such as Jaipur, was probably my favorite city.
Hmm.
The monuments of Taj Mahal, just
Hmm.
absolutely beautiful, mind blowing to the smallest detail on everything. But then, of course, a lot of the old cities, even some in ruins, like Hampi, is
Yes,
really
Hampi.
fascinating.
I've been seeing a lot on. I follow a lot of on Instagram. I follow several folks that are in India and travel. blogs, I guess, to India. And Hampi's been all over the place. I've noticed the last couple of weeks. So, what? Tell me about Hampi, because I'm really intrigued with that place.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, it's in south central India, but
Mm-hmm.
inland, and it's the ruins of this entire civilization
Mm-hmm.
that got overrun through some wars, and then I think their water was either cut off or they went through a prolonged drought, and the people had to abandon it. But it was all made out of very fancy carved stone, sometimes even megalithic. I know you'd love it, Walter, because you can just wander for days throughout these ruins, and it's so
Mm-hmm.
surreal. It's all these boulders, kind of like Joshua Tree National Park, just a boulder terrain. So the landscape is quite beautiful too, and it just goes on and on and on. You give yourself about a week if you're going to go to Hampi to really
Yeah, and
get into the
there's
fabric of it.
when you're talking about India, um, there's as much a distance between like the time of Hampi and these really old cities to the era of the Moguls as there was to whoever built the Great Pyramid in Egypt to the era of the pharaohs, right? I mean, isn't this just this vast, or are they closer in history than that?
Well, the pharaohs are much older than the civilization that built Hampi. At least I think that was
Yeah.
about 600 to 800 AD was at its
Mm-hmm.
peak. Where, of
Mm-hmm.
course, we know pharaonic Egypt is many thousands of years BC.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I think Egypt is the mother civilization of the West. It was the Osirian Empire
Mm-hmm.
that built pyramids, the Sphinx, and the most sophisticated architecture. And it is the oldest. Isn't it interesting that the most perfect pyramids in the world, such as the Great Pyramid, are the best preserved? So
Yeah.
usually it's the other way around. You start with the proto pyramids and they're all
Mm-hmm.
crumbling down, and they keep building them and getting better. And then they come out with the Great Pyramid. But in this
Yeah.
case, it's the other way around. They started with the pinnacle of pyramid building and then all the rest. And I rode a horse from the Great Pyramid of Giza to Saqqara, and you see a
Cool.
dozen or so pyramids along the way, and some are just rubble piles. They're
Oh, wow.
completely
Yeah.
broken down.
Well, you're talking about Egypt and its influence. When going back to, you're talking about Cambodia and in Vietnam and stuff, you find um, the traces of the Kham Empire, right?
Yeah.
And Egypt was one of the founding members, so to speak, is my understanding of the old Kham Empire. That because you had the blending of the Osirian culture plus the Hinduism, and this is kind of reflected, I think, in what you see as you described in Thailand and the other places where it is a blending of Buddhism and Hinduism, and I think personally, I suspect that it's the Kham Empire that explains the mysterious city found in the Grand Canyon that was described as kind of Egyptian, but not quite Egyptian. Well, that could very well explain the ancient Kham Empire, I think. Kind of Egyptian, but you know, Hindu as well. And have you seen much of I guess remnants of the Kham Empire in in your travels? In this, the reflection of this.
Oh, well, throughout India, of course, you see
Mm-hmm.
it. What extends into Pakistan, which I have not been there, but I would love to go to Mohenjo-daro and Harappa of the Indus culture.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
especially in Mohenjo-daro, which is
Yeah.
in present-day Pakistan,
Mm-hmm.
but several miles away from the Indus River now, showing how old it is.
Yeah.
And I learned about this in David Hatcher Childress's book on lost cities and
Yeah.
continents of the,
Yeah.
where he talked about when they were excavating Mohenjo-daro, they got down to the street level and they found people holding hands that died very suddenly. Then somebody had the idea of bringing out a Geiger counter and finding that they were heavily irradiated from
Yeah.
some kind of nuclear catastrophe.
Right.
So
Right.
that
Yeah.
might have been part of the Rama Empire,
The
an extension,
Mahabharata.
let's say Lemuria, some of those people, and or
Mm-hmm.
a war with Atlantis, kind of showing that there was some high-tech wars that once took place on Earth.
Well, our experiences are flipped. I haven't been to India, and that was honestly the first place I ever wanted to go when I thought about world travel. And I haven't made it there, but I've been to Pakistan. I had to work there. I was in Islamabad most of that time, in Karachi for a week, and it was so frustrating to not be able to take time off to go visit Mohenjo-daro. But I wasn't able to, but I got close. But I just wasn't able to quite make that happen. So yeah, it's a part of the world, India. I have to go see. It's kind of a personal quest. So on that subject, what really drew you to world travel and keeps drawing you back?
Well, it's such an adventure. When you go to a place you've never been to before, you're seeing the world like you're a child again, and the mind is just soaking in so much information, from the culture to the people to the language to the sights, the sounds, the smells, everything plays into it. So it feels like time slows down in a way that you get so much more in your everyday 18-hour awakening hours when you travel, and especially if you're going from place to place and in movement quite a bit, that these are the moments that make up our lives. They've done interviews with people at the end of their life, and they say, what do you regret the most? And it's just not having the time to do things I wanted to try and travel and to be places. So these are the moments, and that's what people regret not having more of in their lifetime, because as we know, it's a short ticking clock there on how when we're old enough to be able to travel independently, but also strong enough in our older years to be able to still do it. So you only get this window opportunity, say from your 20s to your 50s, perhaps, when you want to do this kind of really out into the bush kind of travel and go to far-flung places like Mohenjo-daro when you're in Pakistan, or Hampi if you're in India. I mean, it takes a certain degree of stamina, plus, of course, financing it. You have to have some money behind you to do these kind of trips.
That's for sure. That's for sure. But it's I find it to be it is a bug. It is. You get that bug, and you don't want to say it's been too long since I've got to travel the way I wanted to. But I'm changing that soon, because I'm going to be working with another company doing specialty tours and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to getting back into that. Of all the places you've been around the world, what was the eeriest place, the spookiest place you've been?
Well, I've been to some so-called haunted sites and had some occasional strange experiences, even in ghost towns. One time, a woman I was with in Jerome, not far from David Childress in the Verde Valley, the old mining town, which is a half ghost town, half re-inhabited. Although these places are getting popular again, and if they're kind of cool and have a good infrastructure, Virginia City, out where I'm at in Nevada, it's not even really a ghost town anymore. All the buildings have been bought up and refurbished, and people living in them now. But in Jerome, there were some that were pretty run down. And so this woman I was with saw a ghost, and I kind of got a glimpse of it, but she was so freaked out, and it lasted several days. It almost kind of ruined the trip because she was so upset about the whole sighting. So they're still spooks. They can't come out and reach out and choke you or anything. They just scare you if that's. But I feel like you got to let that in. You have to let that energy affect you. And if you don't, then I might have just seen a ghost. So what?
Another experience. So when
another experience. There you go.
Jumping way over to Nepal. I imagine you heard a lot about the Yeti, and there's a lot of that gets bandied about and talked about when you're over there in the Himalaya.
Abominable snowman.
Yes, the abominable snowman and such. So that's got to be probably a very popular theme over there, right? Because the tourists
these paranormal hotspots that oftentimes have crypto creature sightings. I think that's really amazing. If I were to do a travel guidebook again, I'll run this by you, Walter, because I know you're in publishing. Yeah. How about the worldwide guide to paranormal hotspots?
I don't think that's been done.
All the weirdness that goes on there.
I don't think that's been done. We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah,
because that's interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I one of the things another one of those couldn't make it happen. I was on the job, so I wasn't on my own time or own dime. But I had to work in Khartoum, Sudan, a couple of times.
Oh,
and
wow.
Of course, across the it's where the White Nile and the Blue Nile come together, of course, or diverge, depending upon where you're looking. But there's Omdurman, which is the old city. It's where the Mahdi, during the time of Gordon and the Mahdi Wall, all that stuff. If you've seen the Charlton Heston movie Khartoum, that's the era that I'm talking about. But Omdurman is the old city, and I was trying to arrange observing an exorcism done by a Yazidi. I think it was a Yazidi priest, and I was in the early stages of trying to make that happen. I wasn't able to do that, and when I look back on it, I think maybe I didn't want to be exposed to that kind of energy. But back then, I was all about let's have this weird experience. Let's see this potentially very scary, crazy thing going on, and I always found that it was the that's why I asked about the spooky things, because it's always the spooky, somewhat mystical, very mystical, somewhat occulty things that I'm always curious about, when you go to these areas. In Iraq, by the way, when you go to Mosul, the ancient ruins of Nineveh are there. Yeah. And that was where they filmed the opening of the original film, The Exorcist. And it didn't dawn on me at first that we got to walk around it, through the big gate with the winged sphinxes and walk around in there. And then it dawned on me later, hey, wait a minute, that's where I've seen this stuff is in the film. So I was always seeking out, the weird and the bizarre. But when a few years back, you went to Antarctica, of course, which you've talked about a lot, all over the place. And as I mentioned earlier in the intro, you made the that treacherous crossing of Drake's Passage.
Yeah,
kind of share a little bit of that with the viewers, what that's like.
Oh, well, it's probably the hardest trip I've ever been on. And I was already in my 50s when I did it. And it basically starts out really calm, just on the placid channel called the Beagle Channel, named after Darwin's trip. It's a southernmost channel through Terra del Fuego, whereas the Magellan Straits is farther north. That separates the southern Patagonia from Terra del Fuego, and that was, of course, discovered by Magellan a little over 500 years ago, where the Beagle Channel was fairly recent, discovered with Darwin's trip about 200 years ago. So it was nice sailing. There are dolphins jumping and swimming out to meet us in the boat, and even penguins can also jump out of the water. But as soon as we turned on the Drake, man, everything changed, and up came the dinner, up came everything in my stomach for the last 3 days, and I couldn't eat for a couple days too. So I think I lost about 25 pounds on the Drake Passage. That was a crash diet there. But boy, it was great when we finally made it to terra firma and got out at the first base, which is a Polish base, Arktowski, with our crew was all Polish, and most of the people aboard, just 3 Americans and 11 Poles. So we set it up with them to bring some fresh fruit and vegetables, and then they welcomed us in and got a shower and even got on Wi-Fi and let everybody know we arrived safely. And then for the next 15 days total, we were just touring around the Palmer Peninsula on this sailboat and jumping out on a dinghy and exploring when we wanted to. So it is kind of one of the misconceptions that, Antarctica's closed, you can't go there. Well, I did, and I got pictures right here on my cell if you want to see. And the whole notion of a flat Earth is just bogus.
Right.
It's make believe. Of course, it's a spherical planet. If you want to see pictures of continental Antarctica, I'll show you. That's the thing I say, and I don't do it anymore. Debate these flat Earth people,
Right.
but it's a little simple equation because they say there's an entire ice wall surrounding, and there is no continental landmass. So, well, then where the hell was I?
Yeah, exactly.
I go beyond the ice wall, but there was no ice wall. There are big, of course, ice shelves.
Sure.
Which you've seen all their pictures. Yeah, that's the Larsen A and B ice shelf, the Rots ice shelf, and they occasionally calve these giant icebergs. That was the first thing we saw, Walter, on the Drake is icebergs with big flat tops that had broken off one of these shelves. And we had to go up there as soon as we were able to and do watch to look out for icebergs. When we were done throwing up, and I was up there, I'm thinking, oh man, these waves are huge. You just go up and down. I think we're just so screwed.
Tell me about
the boat just made it. It just kept going.
The swells, though, they're monstrous, right?
So even on cruise ships, more than 50% of the people on cruise ships even get seasick.
Yeah,
and they're much more. And they get down there in 2 days. It took us 4 days.
And didn't you say that the seasickness lingered even after you were on land? It was lingering.
It kind of stays with you because it's being violently ill, right? It's just like if you get over the flu, you got a couple lingering days where you don't feel too good. But we got over it and did not get seasick on the way back.
I was going to ask you, did you sail back?
We do, of course. Yeah, it was our home for 26 days. Living on this boat. Even when we went ashore to the bases and stuff, we always went back each night to sleep in our bunks.
Tell us about the bases.
Well, they're largely research bases. Per the Antarctic Treaty, you're not allowed to go down there and do military operations or weapons testing or bomb detonations. All that is prohibited, and good thing for it.
Yeah.
It also preserves the wilderness, the animals, the minerals, the mining is prohibited. A lot of countries are trying to get in on it, commercial fishing too, but everything below the 60-degree parallel south is part of the Antarctic Treaty and forbidden. And that's been one of the longest lasting world treaties that has remained, and good thing for it. So the other misconception is that, you can't go there because it's military. No, there's not. Even the bases, the U.S. bases are all funded from the National Science Foundation. If they needed an emergency evacuation, sometimes they'll bring in supplies, then military can get involved, but never in any kind of conquest, testing, doing anything militaries do, training even. They train in different ways and they train in a military style, but it's not the military that goes down there. It's citizens, and people can apply to work at some of the bases.
Sure. Yeah, that's becoming more popular. The folks there's been a couple of guys who have done video blogs while they're working down there, and it shows the realities. You talk about the misperceptions. One of them is the Operation Highjump, the legendary Operation Highjump with Admiral Byrd, and some of the wild fantasy tales that are told about that. And when you do any kind of serious deep dive into there, you learn the facts about what really happened and how it happened, and it's still very interesting though that that Byrd's son, who was a naval officer, was on the expedition, and his death, the circumstances of his death, were very synchronicities to the mysterious death of Edgar Allan Poe. And what's really fun is that Poe was working on a project related to Antarctica, had written his only novel was the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, which is this big mysterious lost world, hollow earth thing about Antarctica. And when he died, he kept muttering the name Reynolds over and over again. And the Reynolds that was in his life was involved with John Cleve Sims, the famous Hollow Earth guy in the early mid 19th century. And Bird's son, much the same circumstances when he's found. I do believe he's found dead. He's in, just like Poe, he's in tattered clothes that didn't belong to him. It's in Baltimore. Bird's son is found dead in this abandoned warehouse in Baltimore. Poe is found drunk in the streets and dies, some days later. And of course, Bird, the son, he had gone on Operation Highjump, so he had an Antarctica connection there, and of course his father, the whole Antarctica lore. So it makes you wonder, what is going on with this? That's kind of one of those odd things in history. How far in to the continent did you go on your tour?
So if you're familiar with the Palmer Peninsula, South America extends down. That's the bottom tip of Tierra del Fuego, and then the Palmer Peninsula comes up. It's the shortest connection from any other continental landmass to Antarctica. But the first thing we experienced, and most people coming in, is a chain of islands. And they're very interesting in their own right. And so first couple days was going to the different islands and sailing the Bransford Strait, and then getting finally to the continental landmass of West Antarctica. All the while stopping at different bases along the way and penguin colonies and observing the wildlife. None of the animals have any fear of humans. It's quite refreshing to see. They're just as curious looking at us as we were at them.
Sure.
Yeah. So we eventually made it to the continental landmass, and then went to a few other islands. This really beautiful channel called the Lemire Straits for about 18 kilometers, very narrow rocks, and there were whales breaching out of the water in there. It was just magical in the stark beauty that is Antarctica. You don't see any trees. There's no bushes. There's nothing green down there, really. Really, there's nothing brown or tan either. There's no earth tones. It's just black of the mountains, black also on the animals, black and white, usually white of the clouds and blue of the sky and the ocean. So it's like a loss of all the primary colors except for blue. And it just is this otherworldly kind of place. I often compare it to being on another planet, because it just seems so far removed from planet Earth to be over there.
Did you get to go into or see or explore any of those ice tunnels that form?
I know about them, and we've seen some in the distance. And we were hiking over one of them, which just less than a year later became a news story at the Vernansky Ukrainian base. And they discovered an extensive under ice cavern system that we walked over to go visit another British outpost during Operation Tamberlin, when they were spying on the Nazis. And there was no lock on the door. You just walk right in. It's like you're just checking in for your assignment in 1950. Canned food still on the shelves.
I was going to say, it's well preserved, right?
Oh, very well preserved. But man, what a lonely life that would have been.
Yeah.
Just you and a couple guys and no women. It was just people and there were reports of people going crazy or not wanting to winter over on the Chilean base. There was a story of a doctor who did not want to winter over, and they said, "Nope, you're staying." And they're pulling out in the boat, and he went and burned down the base. So they had to come back and get everybody. Otherwise, they all would have died from exposure.
How much trouble was he in, I wonder?
Well, he didn't care. He just, I will not stay another winter. Throw me in jail. I'd rather do that than be down here.
Yeah, just the cabin.
The winters are just brutal.
Sure, absolutely. What are the nights like? What were the nights like when you were there?
Well, there wasn't much night because we went down there just a few weeks after summer solstice. Of course, seasons are opposite. So we left in mid-January.
Uh-huh.
It was only about a month. So we got to within 1 degree of the Antarctic Circle. And had we been there a month earlier, then you get the 24 hours of daylight.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
really the days were about 18 hours long with a couple hours of twilight on either end. And it only got dark for about 3 or 4 hours each night.
That's what I thought. And so you really didn't get to see much of a starry sky down there.
No, it was cloudy most of the time too. And I was the few times it did break, and including southern Patagonia and Tierra del Fuego, I'm always on the lookout for chemtrails, because some countries in Southeast Asia, you never see them, for example. And we did see them in Chile and Argentina around the Andes Mountains, but that far south, never saw a single chemtrail for about 2 months. Time we were in southern Patagonia, Tierra del Fuego, caught the boat, Antarctica trip, 26 days, and then another 2 weeks in that region. Then got back up to the population areas, and then they're doing it again.
You know, one of my favorite during the 2020 COVID isolation, and I was doing chemotherapy then, but so I was watching a lot of travel TV. A lot. I watched every single episode of every series of, even the ones I'd seen already, of Bourdain's show. But I got into this show with this Todd Carmichael, the coffee guy. And his claim to fame was that he did the fastest solo trek across the Antarctic continent.
Wow.
And he was 40-something when he did that. But would you ever consider doing a big adventurous trek like that across Antarctica?
Oh, I would. Yeah, if it were on somebody else's dime. It's expensive to travel down there. I'd go down there with a film crew, for example, and have even given thought to an itinerary where I'd like to go and stuff.
Well, you know what? Share with because we got a lot of people in the audience, viewers, who would love to travel, and the first thing that comes to mind is, well, I could never do that. It's too expensive. But once you start traveling, you really learn how accessible it is. World travel is much more accessible to more people than they realize. But when you were writing the Sacred Places books, the whole series and stuff, share with the audience how you made that happen.
Oh, well, how did I make it happen? Well, I just started writing my first book when I was backpacking around the world in the early 1990s. I was an English teacher in Japan and self-financed my whole trip. And my first book is called World Stompers, a global travel manifesto. It helps other people if they want to plan and execute their own trip. Still in print, and still people pick it up. And I make all my books evergreen, so they never go out of style or out of date. They're always just information like how to get to the Taj Mahal. That's never going to change.
Right.
So if you put that kind of information in the book, travel books, then they become evergreen and they're always relevant, just like the Sacred Places books. So I tried out a couple books with another publisher, Hunter Publishing. I did my second and third book, Extreme Adventures Hawaii and Extreme Adventures Northern California, through Hunter. And then by then I knew David Hatcher Childress. He's got a publishing company, and then I met you, and that's the way to go. If you're going to come out with a lot of books yourself, if you think you have it in you, and you also can work with other authors and publish their book, then it makes sense to be a publisher. But if somebody's just got a one-off book, I usually steer them to Kindle Direct Publishing. You can get everything you need through them, and the biggest marketplace to try to sell.
Yeah. Well, a lot of I know the tourist travel writers, they will get a lot of their trips comped, a big portion of that comped by either the publisher or the places that they're writing about. That's been long how, travel writers will do that. But, you, of course, you started out, getting a teaching job in Japan. And there's a lot of people, who do that. I know that when you read David Childress's books, he talks about the different jobs he had, like working for Aramco, the oil company, while he was in Saudi I think, or North Africa, or some place where some dangerous things happened. And it almost, he was that close to something bad happening to him. But that's the thing, is if you really want to get out there and see these places, and you're right, there's most people, you got this window of time in your life where there's certain things you can do a lot more easily. If you have a family, wife and kids, or husband and kids, depending, if you're a lady, it's not so easy to run off to some far corner of the world and work for 6 months and then, travel the other 6 months. But there are, interesting ways to make this happen and see, some very interesting places. Most of my world travels were when I was, working in corporate counterterrorism, and it was on the company
Well,
dime.
then you don't have to pay for it yourself, at least.
Yeah. And it was wherever I went, I was there for a month at a time, but I would make the most of it, being interested in this stuff. I would take a couple of times I took your books and David's books. And so if I was in some place, I'm like, okay, let's see what David or Brad said about that. And let's see, have I seen that? No, I'll go check that out. And, that was my curiosity, was my guide. And I can't recall saying no to, because the way I worked was, I could say no to some stuff if I wanted to. But, now I will say that of all the places that I have been to, that I never need to see again as long as I live, really, Iraq was the only place. And in all fairness, it was 2003. There was a conflict going on, so of course. But any of the other places, I would definitely go back to. Is there any place on this earth that you've been to that you would never go back to again, and why?
I wasn't too impressed with China. It was really hard travel. They've torn down and destroyed most of their cultural relics in the Cultural Revolution. So this communist architecture is just so terrible.
It's like Stalin's architecture.
Yeah, and just the people were very rude, I thought. And if they, or just indifferent, they would just look at you, but you couldn't interact with them. They just see everywhere I went, just being stared at without any kind of interaction. Or I don't be over China. The Great Wall is amazing. The Forbidden City is still there, and a couple things here and there. And out in the countryside, as the country rises up to the Tibetan plateau, it's beautiful.
Oh, I bet.
Landscape, some of the rivers and stuff too. But been there, done that.
Yeah,
I'd rather hit another country. I'd go back to India way before I'd go back to China.
Well, like I said, that was the first. I've told these guys, the audience, they've heard me say this ad nauseum, but that was the first place I ever really wanted to go in the world. I had a college course. I was like in my last year, and I had to wrap up some credits. So I took a course in religions of the world. And the professor, he had spent many years in India as a young man. And then when he started his academic career, he had taken his wife and kids over there. And I remember he must have had like 2,000 slides that he showed us of all the places. And I just became enamored. I'm like, oh, I got to go to this place. It's so, the mystical qualities of it, and just the age of the civilization and the mystery of the civilization, as from the Western perspective. Right. And it's always fascinated me. And like I said, the closest I've come so far has been Pakistan, but it's the first place. India is the first place I wanted to go, and I haven't got there yet, but I'm going to be changing that hopefully in the near future. I've recently published a series of books by an author, Talbot Mundy, who was a pulp era author. And he writes a lot about the mysticism, the mystical part of the culture there, and in the ancient sites and things. And he puts them in a kind of a pulp adventure, proto Indiana Jones kind of context. And it's really good stuff. And anyway, I talk about that a lot from the fiction side of the house of what I do here. But the What's your favorite place in India? I asked you that already. What about have you been to Goa?
Yeah, Goa's a blast. Really
Now that's the
fun,
old Portuguese colony,
all-night
right?
parties in the winter.
Yeah, that's that's a popular spot. Um, let me see where I got this note. Doing a brain dump on my. I usually have my notes in my head here. Let me ask you about. Let's move into South America here now. That's right. I wanted to hit South America. One place I have not been to is Brazil, and you write about the rainforest in your books. Tell me about Brazil.
Didn't quite get to Brazil on my trip to South America. Got to Uruguay, which borders up to it. And they say it's a lot like that. It's a big party. Uruguay is a really fun country. They're like the Brazilians. They have legalized marijuana, first country in South America to do that.
Wow. Okay.
And, yeah, Brazilian, of course, is all Portuguese speaking, where all the other countries of South America are Spanish speaking. So there's a difference in culture there. But,
when you were in Uruguay, I written about and talk a lot about Sir Richard Francis Burton, and he had done some, I guess you'd say, investigative reporting on the border wars that were going on at the time. But he did a lot of river travel. Did you take, like any river transportation while you were there?
Yeah, well, you got to take a ferry across from Buenos Aires to. You could go to Montevideo, the capital of Uruguay, but we went to a really cool colonial city called Colonia Sacramento, and it was right along the big waterway. You could only see the glow of the lights from Buenos Aires. It was that far away.
Oh wow!
So
Okay.
the curvature of the Earth blocks it. Sorry, flat earthers.
Did your
30 miles and it starts wrapping around the planet?
Did your Antarctica journey, did that take you much into Patagonia while you were down there?
Well, you traveled through Patagonia, is the southernmost part of South America. It's also Chile and Argentina both consider that region Patagonia.
Did you spend much time in Patagonia?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's amazing. I'd go back there for sure. Along the spine of the Andes Mountains, especially towards the bottom, southern Patagonia, Torre de Pines National Park in Chile is just off the hooks. Most beautiful mountains I've ever seen. But the weather down there is quite stormy, very windy, even in the summer, and cold. It can be, you could get snow overnight sometimes in Ushuaia. We had to wait around a couple weeks in Ushuaia, which is the southernmost city of the world, for our boat to leave on the Antarctica trip. And so there were some really cold nights down there, and it was the middle of summer. It's really inhospitable climate. It goes so far south that there's a geography trivia question. If you went from Argentina due east, what's the next country you'd hit?
Is it because Chile curves? Is it Chile? Or?
You would hit Chile all the way around the planet Earth. You would not hit South Africa. You would not hit Australia, New Zealand. You would come all the way around the planet until you hit Chile on the Terra del Fuego.
Yeah, because you would. Yeah, okay. Oh, that's
that far south, way farther south than any continent.
Patagonia is land of giants, and
that's
there is that story that Sir Francis Drake's own expedition encountered these giants.
I think they all did, including Magellan. His historian was the first to document the Patagonian giants.
What do you think about that story?
They were wintering over in a place called San Julian, and we stopped there on the drive down. Cool little port town, big bay that has really high swings of the tides. In fact, we were laying out, my girlfriend and I, we were sunning ourselves, and then a dog came, and it was kind of agitating, not mean in any way, but indicating, you guys better get up. And so we did, and we thought he was trying to show us something, and picked up our blankets and stuff, fortunately, because minutes later, the tide just washed over this area we were hanging out in, real big swings.
Dog knew.
Yeah, dog kind of saved us.
The dog
If I
knew.
were a big St. Bernard dog like he was, I call him St. Julian. So he was our little saint dog. And then there's a replica of the Magellan ship there, and they had to winter over because they didn't think they'd get through, and sent out smaller search parties to finally find the Magellan Straits, which they did. But in the time that they were there, they had some mutinies, and some ships went back to Spain of the original 5 Armada. One sank in off the coast of Patagonia. Another was lost in the Philippines. Only one ship made it fully around the world. And of course, Magellan was killed in the Philippines as well on Mactan Island. And but the historian Pigafetta, who recorded the Patagonian Giants, his diary told the story of the trip, and he made it. He was one of the 18 people of the 150 that left. Just what a voyage for several years until they finally made it back to Spain.
Yeah, that was an incredible era. You know, the conquest stuff farther to the north notwithstanding, you know, there's a lot of controversy about that, but the just the pure exploration part of that history is, you know, fascinating. It's how they described what they were seeing in these far off places, and how something that subsequently you learn is much more, you know, not mundane, but much more realistic than how it's originally perceived and depicted. And yet there's still margin for, you know, it could have been something weird, you know. Not all things have been proven to, you know, just be exaggerations. We are approaching the hour mark, and I think you want to take some questions from the live chat.
Yeah, I got a good 20 minutes or so left, but I got my dinner waiting for me downstairs too.
Oh, okay.
You don't mind? Let's take some questions and
okay. So you guys remember, it's all caps if you want me to know that you're talking to us, and if you want me to see it. So all caps, folks. If you have any questions for Brad about his world travels, about Antarctica, about, you know, his recent a month ago, the appearance at Contact in the Desert, and anything, you know, that Brad's been up to lately. So speaking of which, what have you been up to lately?
Well, I'm out here in Illinois right now, and it is just after sunset, as you can see over my shoulder. Just kind of got dark out.
Are you in Kempton? Are you at one of the
houses? I will be tomorrow. I'm driving down there tomorrow. To David's not there yet, but they're doing the canoe trip a week from Saturday. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to fly out of here in a week to go down to Florida. I'm doing a series on Antarctica with Billy Carson's production company, Forbidden Knowledge, called Secrets of Antarctica.
Cool.
So yeah, kind of bookend this side of the trip to see my family out here in Chicago.
Oh, good. Yeah, cool. Yeah, folks, I'm telling you, Brad will back this up. If you're a fan of you know, David's works and books, and believe me, there's a lot more to David and what he does than just Ancient Aliens. You know, trust us. If you ever can get over to the headquarters of Adventures Unlimited Press and the World Explorers Club there in Kempton, Illinois, I think David owns like a third of the little town. Several of the houses and his main warehouses there, and the bookstore. It's really a cool place. And the clubhouse of the World Explorers Club, that's just the coolest place. It has all, you know, these little doodads and artifacts that he's collected from his travels around the world. So here we go. We've got Nick N asks, what sort of souvenirs does...
Who's Robert?
Oh, maybe he's got... I think he meant Brad. Yeah. Here we go. He corrected that. What sort of souvenirs does Brad get, if any, and does he have a few standout favorites?
Souvenirs. Yeah, I really didn't collect as many as I kind of wish I would have,
Mm-hmm.
just because I like to be a lean, mean traveling machine and not have too much weight. But I do periodically send back packages if I find some cool stuff.
Yeah. Do you ever have to deal with the customs, the slog through customs, or do you avoid?
Yeah, that's another reason I'd avoid bringing stuff back. Just send it, and once in a while the box doesn't show, but most of them make it through.
Yeah.
So I would buy, cool. I like authentic things. I like to collect these bush knives I found in Indonesia,
Great.
and I resold some of them in a Australian marketplace. Also had mass woodworks and things like that.
Right. Yeah, I got a few of those kind of things around here. You know, it's hard to resist, particularly, you know, in some of the places you go, you see stuff. It's like, oh, I gotta have that. Robert asks, Brad, what is the next destination?
Oh, well, Kempton, Illinois tomorrow.
Yeah, there you go.
Lauderdale next week, and then back out to my ranch in Nevada at the end of July. Probably Burning Man. That'll be a.
Oh, there you go. I've never done one of those.
End of August.
I never been? No, I've never been. I need to go check one of those. Check it out. Experience that just once at least. I'm sure. But now, one of the trips I'll never forget. Again, I've talked about it here a lot. Is of course going to Peru and Bolivia with David, and we went out on Lake Titicaca. It was an absolutely one of the most beautiful days I've ever remembered. Just clear, crisp, clean, blue sky. It was not hot, not cold. We went out to the island of the sun and the moon, of course. Cool. And on our way back, the clouds rolled in suddenly. And we ended up in one of the worst storms I've ever been in on a boat with, it didn't have a boat motor. They had sold the boat motor and replaced it with literally 2 motors from VW Beetles. Wow. So this thing was just putting along. Let's see. There were only enough life jackets to go around for maybe a third of the people who were on board. They didn't have a radio. They didn't have a compass. They didn't even have running lights on this thing. And it took us to do what should have been the last 45 minutes to an hour getting back to the little dock that we left from. It took 3 hours. And there was lightning crashing around us. And it was quite the adventure. And I don't swim for crap. So if that boat had gone down, that would have been it. I wouldn't have been here. I would have died a horrible death drowned in the cold Lake Titicaca. So that was, and I'll tell you, I love telling that story. And the whole time we're out there laughing it up. It's like, hey, we're all going to die. And sure enough, we made it back eventually. And the whole town there of the locals, they were just stunned because they thought for sure that the boat had gone down. But that really rolled in fast. But
it's a big lake.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It's quite an experience, though. Oh, we got a couple more questions here. Philip Blair asks, has Brad visited Tibet and or Bhutan? Have you gone to Bhutan?
I have not. I've been to within about 100 miles when I was in the Sikkim region of India and the Himalaya. And when I went to China, it was just grating on me so much that I was thinking about going to Tibet. The original plan was to go up there, but it's rough travel. And then especially with the high elevation, and I was there in the winter. So the days are short and it gets real cold up there too in the winter. So
it's
I
almost
gave Tibet a miss, but I would go back. I'd check that out.
It's almost like the Chinese don't want you going to Tibet, right? You know, or if
they don't. And in fact, they were putting up roadblocks to make it higher. The highest I went in the Himalayas was to the Annapurna base camp, which was about 18,000 feet. It was up there, highest elevation I've ever been. And when I was driving over the spine of the Andes in Peru, got up to 16.5 on a road. That's higher than most mountains anywhere. It's really high up. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Nick N again. Brad, do you get all the general inoculations for travel, or just do you
I
just
haven't
kind of
gotten a vaccine in half my lifetime. I'm kind of anti all that.
really?
Don't like
Okay.
the
Yeah.
shots. Yeah, no, I don't do that. I just stay healthy, work out a
When
lot,
you're
eat right.
when you're traveling for Uncle Sam, of course, you
Don't
you
have a
get all the
choice.
jabs. Yeah, you don't have a choice. So I've got my little yellow card, and then the subsequent employer, they would look at that and they would keep certain things up to date. And if I went certain places, but it has been years since, so mine are all way out of date. And I'm kind of with you. I think I'd be reticent to do that again. I think I'd just be careful, because after my experience with the reaction I had to the COVID vaccine, confirmed
Gee,
by all three of my doctors, by the way.
wow.
But yeah, I think I would avoid needles and such. Let's see. D. Dorothy asked, did Brad go high in the Himalaya? I guess you just said that, right?
Yeah.
16.5. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was in the Andes. I think
In the
Annapurna
Andes.
Base Camp was just around 18 because the
Yeah.
mountains were up to 22. Just huge soaring peaks. Wow. Yeah. I spent one night in Annapurna Base Camp and we heard avalanches during the night, and that was pretty unnerving because you don't
I'll
know if
bet.
they're going to take out the base camp.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Did you
was hard to get up
encounter
there.
when you were in the Himalaya, did you encounter I've talked a little bit about uh Alexandra David Neal, the author of the classic book Magic and Mystery in Tibet, and also Nicholas Roerich and such. Do you encounter, or did you, many mystical sites or mystics, so-called mystics, while you were in these places?
Well, certainly in India, of more than any other places, India is called the
Mhm.
most spiritual country in the world. And
Mhm.
you see sadhus walking the earth like kung fu with just a
Yeah.
little satchel and a walking stick and a loincloth. It's all they got, all they want, all they
Yeah.
need,
Yeah.
and just a little bowl. And then, like the
Yeah.
monks of Southeast Asia, they will just walk the streets in the morning, and whatever donations people put in their bowl is might be all they're going to eat for the day.
Uh-huh.
So it's
Uh-huh.
that's one thing I love about travel is you just get such a diverse perspective about how other people live in the world.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really interesting. AO asks, have you been to Turkey?
Turkey is one that still evades me. Something about Muslim countries, especially in this day and age, can be more dangerous than others. I think
Yeah.
Turkey's the least of which, but that after the earthquake and all the Syrian refugees there, it might not be the safest place to go, even though I'd love to go to Göbekli Tepe and um, Cappadocia, see the underground
Oh yeah,
cities there, and
absolutely.
so many
Absolutely.
Roman ruins too. And there's great treks you can do along the coastline.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and
Definitely on the bucket
it's a
list.
beautiful country. There's
Yep.
places that are just incredible. Um, yeah, I know. When I was going to the Muslim countries, of course, it was on the job every single time, and we had we had a bunch of cash on us, and we were told if things go sour, you're on your own. That's what the cash is for. Get your butt out of the danger zone, and you know get to a safe zone, a safe haven, and give us a call. you know, and we'll get you home. So that was, and what's funny is when I did that travel, that was part of the job. We were aware of it, but it's part of the job. So you really didn't dwell on it.
Hmm.
I would have my keffiyeh and my jalabia and the red checkered scarf and the long shirt and some other things that would help me blend in more. And I had an ass load of cash, and basically, you know, um, your best bug out plan was to walk up to one of these guys with a cab, a taxi, and just say, "Here's 5,000 US. Let me buy your car. Fill it with gas and just haul ass to either the Israeli border or somewhere else that was a friendly and hope there's no bad guys between you and that border. But you didn't dwell on it. You knew that was the plan, but when you think about it, there are places where you go to sleep at night and you never really know 100% if someone's going to be busting in your room in the middle of the night, dragging you off, and you'll never see home again. But again, you don't think about that. You just kind of go, okay, next place, do the job in next place. Dorothy asks, isn't rabies a problem in India?
So if you got bit by a rabid animal, of course, you have to get treated. Yeah. I don't know if there's a vaccine for it, but the last round of vaccines I ever took was half my lifetime ago when I was in southern India, and yellow fever was a concern.
Yeah.
Cholera was a concern. I think there was one or two other that I got a shot for. But if you avoid the real jungly parts of countries, then you pretty much can skip that.
Sure. Nick N asks, do you or have you ever gone to a country specifically to see one single location there?
Yeah, I mean, smaller countries. If you have time, you always want to see more. But when I went to Uruguay, we just wanted to go to Colonia de la Sacramento. And so that satisfied. Finally got some beach days and hanging out and going to bars and nice restaurants. Otherwise, South America and especially Antarctica, it was hard travel. It wasn't easy.
Yeah. Renee, Mrs. John aside, asks me, have I had to bug out? No, I was lucky. I never actually quite had to do that. So, that worked out. That worked out well. So, I think, I missed one here. Philip Blair asks, what's on the top of your bucket list for travel?
Still need to do most of Africa. I've only been to Egypt. Also, I'd go back to Southeast Asia. Countries I haven't been to yet, like Burma. Also, Turkey would be great. And some other locations in the Middle East, Jordan, as we talked earlier.
Oh, Jordan's wonderful. I've been there 4 or 5 times. And the last one's murky because I wasn't there very long. It was transiting through out of Iraq. And I love Jordan. I've worked in Amman. I had worked in Amman several times. That's how I got to go to Petra and the Dead Sea and all that. But I really, really like Amman, Jordan. But when I was transiting home from Iraq, I got to stay in like the Four Seasons Hotel, and I had to be there 2 or 3 nights. And because Iraq, you come out of there so torqued up, it's the only time I could not really enjoy my stay in Amman. After the month in Iraq, which while I was there, it wasn't freaking me out or anything. But when you get down to your last couple of days and you realize, oh, okay, I get to leave here, and you hope to God nothing happens, like, on your way out, you're so torqued up at the end of it that it hits you at the end when you're out. So the nights I was in Amman, all I could think about was, I'm not going to be safe from this trip until my feet are in the United States. It's weird because I never, like I say, never got torqued up about any other gig. And it hit me at the end, while I was there, a good time was had by all, so to speak. But anyway, we're getting into, I think, your last couple of minutes here. So we have one more question, and that's from Soulite, U.S. expat. Brad, have you ever been to South Korea?
I've been to South Korea. I had to go there for a visa run in Japan.
Okay, did you get to see much of it?
Busan. I only went to one city, Busan, and I wasn't too impressed. Big industrial city on the coast. So there was a cool little cliff trail I took. That's the only thing I could think of that was at all memorable.
We'll squeeze in one last question, and it's from Philip Blair, one of our regulars. What's the best book for an amateur traveler to read before heading out, in your opinion?
Well, my first book, World Stompers, is really the primer. to tell everybody the pitfalls that I had, the good, the bad, the ugly, basically the gist of doing a long-term travel solo or with another, but independent travel, which I think is always the freest way to go. But you got to know what you're getting into. That's why this book has been done so well over the years. Even Oliver Stone endorsed it as a subversive masterpiece of travel writing. So yeah, check out World Stompers. You can find all my books and other authors I published on cccpublishing.com. And if you want to know more about me and projects I'm working on or the conferences I'll be speaking at, you can go to bradolson.com, just as my name's spelled there. And yeah, invite you guys to check out my other books, including those in the esoteric book series.
Yes, absolutely. You guys check that out. Check out those links, and Brad will post those links in related postings to the show and at the Walter Bosley channel. But I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us here and share your travel experiences. And I hope to have you back again.
Yeah, you bet. We'll definitely do it again. Thanks for having me on, Walter, and great to see you again and talk to you and get caught up through this interview.
Tell David and Jennifer and everybody, the gang down there, I said
I
hello.
will. Say we were just on last night.
We'll have you back here soon.
Sounds good, Walter.
All righty. Thank you again. Have a good night, guys. Brad. Okay. Well, we still got about 14 or 15 minutes here. You get just me, just Walter Bosley. So I hope you enjoyed that. Like I said, Brad and I have been known each other for several years, passing each other at events and, of course, hanging out at David Childress's World Explorers Club. And seriously, you guys, check out all of Brad's books. I have this one that is like the first one that he gave me, as I showed you earlier, signed in 2003. And it's one of my favorite books on my shelf. And again, cccpublishing.com or bradolson.com. Check out his books, particularly if you're interested in travel to sacred places or these interesting ancient sites and stuff. Additionally, though, check out also David Childress's Lost Cities and Ancient Mysteries series. I've got them, right there. Whole bunch of them. Well, I have all of those as well, and I have 3, including that one. I have 2 more of Brad's books, and it really. If you don't have the travel bug, these kind of books can contribute to you getting it. Philip Blair asks, how is planning for your India trip coming along? Well, that's a big venture that is going to happen likely after South America and the Yucatan. That Malia and I are planning. It's already, we've got an itinerary down. We're getting closer to that one. And we probably will get 1 or 2 other trips in before we attempt India. But India is something that we'll probably go before we do a tour there, obviously, to do kind of a recon. We might even be doing that with South America before the end of this year. It all depends. All of this depends upon capital and funds, right? So there's a lot of publishing business that we're doing that might preclude that. But excuse me about the coughing again. It's the dry throat. You guys hang tight. I'm going to grab some water here. I'm going to step over here and get some water. I told you that would be quick. Now, as you guys know, I, in particular, love the mystical romance in that classic adventure sense um, of travel. I'm curious about and want to go, see the mystical places, the mysterious places, and really try to dig into things that you don't usually learn um, on a basic tourist trip. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one of those that really caps on tourism, because I'll tell you what. Yeah, there is an annoying way to be a tourist that really I strongly recommend people avoid. And yes, us Americans, we have, I think, my understanding is that it's the worst reputation, but it's certainly among the worst reputations for the way a lot of Americans travel. Um, you know, and you can guess what that is. We could talk about that. That could be a subject for a show. Um, uh, but here's the thing: tourism at least gets people out there in the world. Okay, yes, you can argue which is the better way to do it, but at least they get out there in the world. Now, you go out, you don't treat uh, the world like it's just a big Epcot, a big amusement park for you to tromp around in, um, and be the ugly tourist. But it at least it gets you out there, and it can lead to the kind of travel that I'm talking about, where you really go for the specialty purpose. We're going to be doing the literary tours, of course, but there is the spiritual, the mystical journey as well. Um, I want to go to mystical sites in India. Not just the sites where you see, the religious devotees. I'm talking about the kind of things that Talbot Mundy would dig out, the kind of things that where people say that the strange and the extraordinary, the weird, the mystical actually are and could still be experienced. The extraordinary experience. That's what I'm looking for. And I think these things are there to be had. I'm going to continue this theme. It's going to pop up from time to time as kind of an occasional episode. It'll be a little series, the Mystique of Travel, and hopefully dive deeper into, as we go, the mystical aspects of travel, be that visiting occult sites, right, or arranging to witness a Yazidi exorcist in Omdurman, or maybe having someone take you to a lost Kham temple, or perhaps something believed to be Lemurian, that kind of thing. Just again, I refer back to Talbot Mundy, right? Because he's the guy that really popularized this in Western literature and entertainment. But anyway, as I said earlier, our friend Nick, who's in the room with us, sent me yet another box full of really cool stuff. I showed you the books. Let me show you the. No, you know what? I'm going to do a separate video on the model building stuff, because I like to keep those things separate. Not everybody likes to see the top of it, but I'm going to do a video, kind of a unboxing. Well, I already know what's in there. Philip Blair says, even as an American, I've been to touristy sites here in the United States, thinking to myself, why are these people screaming? Hurts my. Yeah, it's. I think we've all experienced that. Um, it's, it's the kind of tourist to be avoided if you want to stay safe, frankly. You can't go out there. I advise, for years, and I'm still qualified to do this, um, threat and vulnerability assessments. That was what I did. That was part of what I did for years. Um, and one of the things you do for travelers around the world is you tell them the things not to wear. And the average American tourist, you find yourself saying, don't wear anything with USA or an American flag emblazoned across it. Or, you might as well just put a target on your back, because the world's a dangerous place, and some of the dangers aren't too fond of Americans. Uh, in some people's cases, it's no surprise, right? But seriously, you don't want to advertise where you're from. You kind of want to enjoy what you're seeing in the place you're traveling through, in a little bit lower key than the average loud traveler tourist, right? Um, Not only will you be safer, but I think you'll be more open to the nuances of the place you're staying. Now, see, that's something that people automatically think when you talk about world travel. They think of the famous sites, right? Well, it's the nuances that make travel really a special experience. Okay, for me, and I think a lot of travelers, true travelers, would agree with that. It's the nuances. For instance, yeah, when I went to Paris, saw the Eiffel Tower, went to the Louvre. Um, you see the usual things, but I spent as much, if not more, time. Just now, this is years ago, folks, before Paris was ruined by the crap of the last, and of course what France is going through right now. Um, you know, but this was in '99 when I went to Paris, and I spent as much, actually more time, just kind of walking around and doing not the usual things, the typical things um, that tourists do. And I came away with those nuances. Now, when I worked, I had the good fortune to spend a month in each place, so you really get to know a place. When you're in Amman, Jordan, for a month at a time, and I did that trip 4 times. You really get to know a place. You get to know the little nooks and crannies, the little cafes, the little restaurants, the places, around the town, around the city, and the historical sites and stuff. And you're able to slow down. And that's what I'm saying is, when you travel, I recommend, don't overload your schedule. Don't go telling yourself, okay, we're going to fit 100 places in these 4 days. No, don't do that. Pick a few of the places that are famous, the typical ones that people go to see, but really, go about it more leisurely and spend as much time sitting in a cafe and just watching, just soaking it all in. Here's the thing. Why see everything? Why act like it's the only time you're ever going to get to go? Go about it, leave something to see the next time. I've done that with Italy. I've been to Italy a couple of times, twice. Yeah. Once on personal vacation. Oh, actually 3 times, but the first one doesn't count because we really didn't get to leave Aviano. Been to Italy twice. Worked in Rome for a month, one of those times. But I still haven't been to Venice. There's my excuse to get back to Italy. I got to go see Venice, right? And that's kind of my thing, is I'd rather go at a nice, gentle pace and soak it in and really get the feel of a place. So, perfect world, you really got to spend 3 weeks in a place, I think, to really see it. Everything else, anything shorter or much shorter than that is just a whirlwind, you're passing through. Yes, D. Dorothy says, I hear some Americans wear Canadian flags, or at least, when I was traveling, I'd seen that. Wait a minute. Yes, AO, I haven't been to Venice yet, and I got to go. Philip Blair says, I thought the way to visit France was to fall in love with a French man or woman and backpack the countryside for a few months, staying in hostels, etc. Yeah, that's one way to. Now, in '99, I stayed in hostels. Not every time, but for the most part. When I was in the Cinque Terre, I stayed in a hostel in Rio Majora, one that was recommended by Rick Steves. And then I stayed a couple of nights in Manarola, which at the time was a new hostel at the top of the little village there, just right across the piazza from a church. And I stayed in the Ostello di Santa Monaco in Florence. And one night in Florence, I stayed in the narrowest hotel room I've ever seen in my life. That was kind of interesting. Yeah. The only hostel in Paris, I stayed in a hostel, but the only hostel I didn't care for was the one in Zurich. It was cement walls, and it was just cold, and it smelled like nasty, dirty feet, and it just was not pleasant. And Zurich itself was okay. I just had to overnight there before catching the train to continue on into Italy. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was, when I got on the train out of Germany, there were the border police that came on, and they were in very militaristic type of uniforms, the green nylon and very, the cargo BDU pants, and they would take your passport and look at it. And it was just like out of the movies, right? World War II movie or something, and they'd hand you your passport back. Then you get into Switzerland, and they act very officiously suspicious in the kind of similar way that the Germans did, but they were wearing more like corporate security type, civilian clothes, all matching. So it was a uniform, but it was very, okay, let's make sure you are, we're watching you. Okay. Then you roll into Italy. To Chiasso was the first stop. I kid you not. There's these young guys, look like they're about, 25 years old, young bucks, and they're standing there in their uniforms, right? And one of them, he's got his hands in his pockets, and he's got his uniform hat kind of slid back. And the other one, I'm not kidding, I'm not making this up, he's standing there kind of whistling and twirling his uniform hat on his hand. And these pretty girls walk by, and his buddy elbows him, and they look, and they, hey, like you're in New York or something. And the train rolls to a stop, and they get in, and of course they got to check your passports, and it's a border check, and they're just casually, hey, and so I hand my passport over to them, and the guy looks at it, he goes, oh, Americano, hey, and he just hands it back to me without doing anything with it. Just, welcome to Italy. Just real casual. It's like, hey, and that was fun. I knew I was going to like Italy because that was my first experience with Italy. But yeah, so there's that. Oh, hour and 34. So, oh, hey, there's Dr. Farrell is with us. So, anyway, well, I hope you guys liked tonight's show. Really, seriously, check out Brad's books. Go to cccpublishing.com or bradolson.com. Check it out. He's got some really cool books if you're interested in travel, particularly to, ancient or those sacred places. And, also as an offshoot of that, as I told you, check out David Childress's Lost Cities and Ancient Mysteries. Books that Nick N., our friend Nick, sent to me. I showed these earlier. This is The Missing Link of World Civilization, Indo-Aryan Colonization by Vishnu Kant Varma. Just really cool. And then there's Some Missing Chapters of World History, another P.N. Oak book. Joseph, that P.N. Oak guy. And this, of course, is Richard Thompson's Vedic Cosmography and Astronomy. So more of these fascinating books on the Vedic perspective of history. Joseph, I'm going to get you the contact for these books and the other ones. I think there's another contact on this that Nick added that, again, thank you, Nick. I think I can get you a good contact to get these books. But Nick, if you could message Joseph with how you source these, I know he's looking for them. And so now next week, I want to remind you, Scott DeHart, Dr. DeHart will be here talking about Shelley Unbound, his Frankenstein research. I think I have that book. Well, it's usually him. Oh, nope. It's in my shelf with the whole shelf of Joseph's books that I have gathered over the years. But next week, Scott DeHart will be here talking about who actually wrote Frankenstein. And it's with Mary. Mary Shelley was involved with the writing of Frankenstein, but it was not her brainchild. And it's going to be a real controversial show because I know there's some folks who, some of our lady scholars who just don't like that book. And it's, but we're going to have the man himself here next week talking about that. He's in Italy right now, by the way. He has been for a month or so. He and his wife bought a house over there in Sicily, specifically, and it's really cool. So we'll hear about his time in Sicily this summer, but also about the interesting reasons why Percy Shelley could not be public about the writing of Frankenstein. Now, Frankenstein, when it was initially published, was published under anonymous, and Scott DeHart will lay out why they eventually credited it to Mary. So that's going to be very interesting, and that's next week. And I'm working on some more interesting guests in the coming weeks. We're supposed to have David Hatcher Childress himself next month. So as soon as the weather calms down in Oklahoma, Joseph is going to be able to, Dr. Farrell's going to be able to let me know when he can return, and we can talk about transtemporal cosmic warfare again with Dr. Farrell. So, as soon as he's able to do that, we will have him. In the meantime, that's it for tonight. Thank you all for being here, and I will. I'll see you next week. Don't forget, you can pre-order NIMSA, How America Sold Its Soul, at walterbosley.com. So go to walterbosley.com, and it's $5 off if you pre-order it. And it will be released in September. So. Also check out lostcontinentlibrary.com. And I think that's it for tonight. It's been an hour and 40 minutes. And I will see you guys next week. Look for me to jump on here and do some nerdy pop culture model kit building stuff. Let me give you a preview. I can't resist. Let me give you a taste of what our friend Nick just sent me. You guys are going to get a kick out of this because I did. Look how cool Nick is. First of all, he sent me this Henkel HE51A biplane. You guys know how much I love biplanes. Look at that. Ain't that cool? And it's a Hasegawa kit. The Japanese kits are known for being, like Tamiya, Hasegawa. This is 172nd. You guys know how much I love biplanes, and I'm going to share more of this weekend on another video. But Fantastic Plastic is a model company that does some really interesting stuff. And here we have, get this, the Kenneth Arnold UFO. This is where the term, erroneously so, flying saucer came from. Not because a saucer, but because they skipped through the sky like a saucer skipping across water. That's where flying saucer came from. And this is the model kit of the Kenneth Arnold UFO. And wow, Nick, this is cool stuff. This is really cool. So those are the two kits. I'll open up the boxes, show you the parts, and I will be also continuing with the build on the Earth versus the flying saucers attack saucer that I started and have done a little video on. And got to do some fun stuff. You can't live on all the serious stuff all the time, right? You got to do some of this fun stuff. Got to give yourself balance. So anyway, that's it. I'm just droning on, boring you guys now. So thanks again for all you regulars in the live chat, and welcome all the new subscribers. And next week, it'll be Dr. Scott DeHart and Shelley Unbound, the true story of the writing of Frankenstein. So you guys have a good night, and we'll see you next time.